After another first-round loss to the Edmonton Oilers, the LA Kings had a questionable offseason. But will a new regime and a newly refreshed roster help return the LA Kings back to glory? This is the 2025-26 Deep Dive on the Los Angeles Kings. Hello and welcome to team number 17 on my preseason power rankings. We're talking about the LA Kings, and LA was a playoff team last year. Obviously, they were up in the series against the Edmonton Oilers. Then we had the infamous coach's challenge call in Game 3, which completely flipped that series around. They ended up losing once again to the Edmonton Oilers. And it really felt like that was the year for them to break through, right? I think a lot of people looked at last season as the year for the LA Kings to finally slay the demons and get past the Edmonton Oilers, and it didn't happen. And now they've been left in kind of this weird middle ground where they had an interesting offseason. They spent some money. They brought in some guys for the depth of the roster, but they didn't do anything that moved the needle. In some cases, I definitely think they got worse. And we're going to touch on that here. So for me, like the LA Kings are so interesting because like 4 years ago, this team had a loaded prospect pool. A lot of people saw them as like the next big thing coming in the NHL. And then between some of those prospects not working out, some development starting to halt, the Pierre-Luc Dubois fiasco, it really led to this team now that is kind of stuck in no man's land. And I don't think this offseason did a lot to help change some of that. And I actually think in some areas this team looks very, very bad in some specific areas on this team. We're going to kind of dive into that here as we move along. In saying that, though, I do think before we get into kind of the team, the individual position rankings, the rankings are pretty low for pretty much every part of this roster, especially for a team that's ranked 17th. And I want to say that, like, just because like the calculations that gave me my overall rankings have them looking significantly lower than 17th, I do think this team is better than the sum of their parts, right? I think that like this team comes together systematically, and the way that they play actually helps elevate them, especially defensively. And you'll see that they have quite a few guys who rank very well defensively. And that definitely helps the overall case for this team, despite the individual position groups not grading very well. So just a disclaimer there as we jump into this. But obviously, we have the rankings here. 17th in offense, 31st in defense, 26th in goaltending, 25th in special teams, and 27th in coaching culture. Doesn't scream 17th best team in the NHL. But again, it's a team that made the playoffs last year, looked very good in the first two games against the Edmonton Oilers and even parts of Game 3. But, the offense, I think, lacks explosiveness. And the defense is pretty bad, right? I don't think that they did anything over the last really two seasons to benefit the blue line whatsoever. And we're going to kind of get into what that looks like. Obviously, they lost Gavrikov too, which was a pretty significant loss in terms of what he brought to this team and what he did for this team. The goaltending is still questionable depending on how we'll talk about that in a second. The special teams is fine, and the coaching culture has been pretty questionable as well. And I guess that's a good place to start here as we kind of go through and I defend some of these rankings, particularly the defense. I think I'm going to get a lot of pushback on them being 31st. It's close between all the teams there. The difference is like I don't know if Drew Doughty being your number one defenseman in 2025, 2026 is great. And we're going to dive into that. I don't really know if I believe in the core behind him at all. Like I think the depth on this team is pretty bad defensively and doesn't really make up for that lack of a true number one. And that's kind of what led to this rating, because the teams around them, aside from number 32, either had a number one defenseman at least, or a number one defenseman that I trust at least, or had competent depth behind them that could kind of make up for that lack of a number one defenseman, and the Kings don't really have either. But we'll dive more into the blue line as we move along here. Let's begin with coaching culture, though. Ken Holland, obviously a ton of pushback for this past season, for this offseason. I've given him a ton of crap for the the Edmonton Oilers job. I think his end of run in Detroit was pretty bad. He really hasn't had a good resume for the last decade, really. And he comes into LA here, and it didn't really improve. He had a extremely strange free agency after just taking over for this job. But again, this ranking's based obviously more than just that. But I don't think he did himself any favors based on the free agency that the LA Kings had here. And obviously, I mean, Jim Hiller had the weird coaches challenge in Game 3 that kind of lost it for the LA Kings. And that kind of overshadows Jim Hiller as a coach. I don't think he was a terrible coach in year one, but I don't think that there's anything here that really sparks a ton of confidence in me either. I think that I don't think that the coach's challenge was unforgivable and he should have been fired for it. But at the same time, I don't think he's done enough on his resume to kind of prove that he's a lot better than that. So it is what it is there. Season outlook, I mean, who knows? Honestly, this is a strange team, but they're in the Pacific, which thank God they're in the Pacific, because I think if the LA Kings were in basically any other division in the NHL, the discussion around them right now would be, how far from a wild card spot are they going to be? But that third spot in the Pacific is pretty wide open, and they look like they kind of have to be at least close to the front runners for that spot as of now, just based on the fact that they had it last season. And it's led to this really weird run here for this team, because I mean, this is the sixth Pacific team I've talked about so far. This is the halfway point. And there's two teams left in the Pacific Division that I haven't talked about yet. They're Edmonton and Vegas. The Pacific is not good. This is the halfway point of the series. One of these teams in the bottom half is going to make the playoffs, guaranteed. And this is what I mean, right? Could Calgary pass them? Could Vancouver pass them? Absolutely. I think the LA Kings have less issues than those teams, but I don't think that this is, a stable, locked playoff team, especially with the way this offseason went. So genuinely, who knows? I have no idea where the LA Kings are going to finish. Thinking about my season predictions, I don't know if I'm going to have them in the playoffs. I think that there's enough potential upgrades that could happen in some of the teams below them that the LA Kings could be on for a steep fall. But as of now, they get the 17th nod because, as of this moment in time, I think they are the third best team in the Pacific. But by the end of the season, I don't know if I'm going to have them there unless there's some big change. I don't think this team is dynamic enough up front and deep enough on the blue line. But we'll kind of see. So who knows? I think it's kind of a fair generalization of where this team is. I mean, their numbers last year don't look bad, right? They finished sixth in points percentage. They finished second in points percentage in their division. Eighth in goals for. Their expected goals numbers were pretty bad. Jay Fresh has them as 22nd. Evolving Hockey has them just over the halfway point. Their team defense was fantastic, though, and I do think that's going to be a strength for this team, right? I think that despite the individual shortcomings of this roster, I do think that their team defense is going to be very solid. Now, losing Gavrikov and replacing him effectively with Cody Ceci and Joel Edmondson and Brian Dumoulin is going to be tough. I don't love that, but offensively, this team is still going to be pretty solid defensively, despite the fact that Anze Kopitar is a year older. But the rest of this team is actually very underrated in terms of their forward ability to play defense. So I'm less worried about that. I'm less worried about a fall off there, massively. But again, you're talking about a team here, and I mean, eighth in the power play too. Their power play numbers were pretty solid. Their power play though is where they struggled. And I don't know if the finishing is going to repeat itself, right? Like, I mean, being, whether or not, regardless of which expected goals model you want to, stake your claim in, it doesn't really matter because either way, their goals for was significantly higher than their expected goals for. And it's tough for me to think that they're going to be able to repeat that. I don't think they have enough guys on this team. And it's not like they have a bunch of like really young guys that haven't, had the opportunity to prove they could do that. It's more a team that's been around long enough that I can kind of bank on the fact that they probably aren't going to be able to repeat that, which means their defense has to be exceptionally better. It has to be a top 3 defense as a team, right? Like they were last year. I don't know if they can do that again, right? And although I think they'll be good, but I don't think they'll be like, it's hard for me to think that they're going to be top 3 in the NHL good as a team defense. So but that is going to be the thing that kind of helps this team is that team defense, because I don't think the goals are gonna match what they were able to put up last year, and I think this offense is lacking that kind of dynamic offensive contributor that some of the higher end playoff teams have, and even some of the teams that we've talked about already have. So jumping into that here, let's focus on this first of all. I want to highlight Adrian Kempe because Adrian Kempe is kind of my offensive driver on this team, which. If Adrian Kempe is arguably your best offensive player, I don't know how you feel about that, but I love Adrian Kempe. I think he rocks. I also love Kevin Fiala. I think he rocks too. But aside from that, I mean, like, Phillip Danault is massively underrated as an offensive contributor, but I don't know what his usage rate is going to be on this team. Obviously, you still have Anze Kopitar, who's amazing. And can be, that still like a very solid shutdown center, but he's aging, and we saw that a little bit in the playoffs where, he's not the best defensive center in the league, honestly, Kopitar anymore. Which he doesn't really have to be because both Byfield and Danault are both very good defensive centers. But you look at the wingers here. I mean, Andrei Kuzmenko is going to be asked to play a pretty significant role. Warren Foegele, who again is a very, very strong defensive center, doesn't spark a ton of excitement for me. Like Alex Lafreniere is fine, and he showed flashes of being very good last season, but I don't know if I'm ready to give him the full-time nod yet as a top 6 winger. And even if you are, there's not a whole lot of support behind him. I mean, Trevor Moore is good, but then you have Joel Armia. I think that Helenius is going to get a look, at least to start, but again, like, I don't know how much he'll be able to contribute offensively. And then Corey Perry, who they brought in, which again, Corey Perry and Joel Armia are fourth liners at this point, right? Now they're good fourth liners. They also have chemistry together. They went to a Stanley Cup final together in 2021 with the Canadiens. But, those aren't going to be your spark plug, offensive creators. And I think that's what this team really lacks. And, they were able to outscore their expected goals last year. But I mean, I look at this offense and I don't know if they have enough guys who can do that consistently year over year. And I don't know if they're going to be able to generate that kind of offense. And their blue line isn't filled with offensive creators either. So that kind of makes it tough. And I wanted to start by talking about Anze Kopitar, because Anze Kopitar is still a very, very effective, defensive center. But I don't know if Anze Kopitar is like a true 1C anymore, especially for a team trying to compete for a Stanley Cup. Now with Byfield and Danault behind him, this is actually like one of the better center cores in the league. With those three, as far as a top 3 goes, and Helenius or whoever they end up having as the 4C is questionable. And even I like Samuel Helenius out of the draft, so we'll see. But in terms of like a top 3, I do think it's one of the better top 3s in the league, but I don't know if Anze Kopitar is going to be able to carry the brunt of the load. Not that he has to, but in case of injuries or whatever, like those are always things that can happen. But I mean, like, Kopitar is still really good at the things that he's good at. I mean, he's still like a very good passer. His ability to get pucks into high danger areas, 2 wingers, is still very effective. And when you have guys like Kevin Fiala and Adrian Kempe who can score, that's a pretty valuable trait. for your center. And defensively, I mean, he's still a very, very good defender, right? Like his puck touches are phenomenal in the defensive zone. He's able to get out of the zone very effectively when he has the puck. His ability to clog passing lanes is still super effective. His stick work is still phenomenal. All the things that Anze Kopitar has done for his entire career as a defensive center is still there for the most part. The thing that really concerns me is the speed, and we saw that get kind of exposed in the Oilers series, and even throughout the year. I mean, like his defensive numbers definitely took a dip, and I think it's more to do with the speed, right? Which is why he's still like a super effective penalty killer, and he's also super effective like stopping opportunities like off cycles in the defensive zone. But if you're on the rush and you're a fast-paced team and you can get speed out of your zone, Kopitar is having trouble with that at this point in his career, which I mean makes sense, right? He's a veteran in the NHL. It's not a knock on him. It's just kind of how age works. Luckily for the LA Kings, they have Philip Deneau and Quinton Byfield, who are both very good defensive centers. And in Deneau's case, I think at this point he's better than Anze Kopitar as a defensive center. So like you have that option, but I again, like very similar to what I talked about in Minnesota, where it's a team that's like aging in this core that they've built. Now, I don't think it's as significant as it was in Minnesota. But Minnesota also has significantly better young players around them. So it creates this weird thing where, I don't think that LA is as dramatic in either direction as like a team like Minnesota is, but you still have kind of these top of the lineup guys, right? Like in your Anze Kopitars and Drew Doughty's that are clearly aging and clearly aren't the same player anymore. So I don't know what to expect from Anze Kopitar at this point. Like I don't know what the expectation is for him. Do I expect a similar season to last year? Yeah, probably. And I think that he can take kind of a step down, but I think the big question is, like, can Byfield step in and be a true number one center? Like, I think this is kind of the year for him to take that mantle, and if he does, then, the outlook in terms of centers look even better than they already do for the LA Kings team. This isn't me trying to be negative, it's just kind of the reality of Kopitar being old. Like, really. Speaking of Adrian Kempe, though, I love Adrian Kempe. I think Adrian Kempe rocks. Now, he isn't somebody who generates a ton of chances, at least in terms of like his expected goals and stuff, and especially his chance assists. Like they're really not great. His contributions to chances is about middle of the pack in the league, but his skating speed is very good. He's very fast. He has that twitchy speed, and that does help him in creating rush opportunities. He's a super effective goal scorer. I mean, he's very good at that. And he's very good off the rush. I mean, his ability to create shots off the rush is one of the best in the league. And it really gives the Kings this very unique kind of guy who can create just kind of like in the snap of a finger, where he gets the puck and then all of a sudden he's getting a shot on goal, and a lot of the time it's going in the back of the net. And, having that kind of ability to completely turn a play around is very important, especially when, you have centers who aren't as good at that, right? I mean, like Philip Deneau in his prime was phenomenal at that too. I mean, we talked about that Montreal Canadiens trio, Tatar, Gallagher, and Deneau all the time, and how good they were at doing just that. Guys like Anze Kopitar, like the rush offense isn't what it used to be for him, and having Kempe who can kind of be that play driver off the rush is really important, and we saw that a lot last year. And I really think that Adrian Kempe doesn't get enough love for being this like very, very high end player at what he does. Now, I don't think he's the reason why I don't put him as higher as like a winger in terms of like overall rankings is just because he's very one-dimensional isn't the right word, but he doesn't have this. He's not as toolsy as like a Kirill Kaprizov is, for instance, right? Like he's very, very good at like the one thing that he's very good at, but you can't ask him to not be a high energy off the rush kind of winger. And which is fine. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that, right? Some players are just good at things and not good at others. But Adrian Kempe, for what he is super effective off the rush, and I really love him. He's probably my favorite player on the LA Kings just because of that. He's the type of player that I really like, and I would like to see him improve on his contributions in terms of even getting assists off the rush. I feel like he takes a lot of shots coming off the rush, but his passing ability isn't as high as I'd like it. So I think that being able to create more and utilize his teammates more off the rush would be a useful tactic for him, because a lot of his assists are coming during cycles and more setup plays and stuff like that. But I think being able to give him even like a running mate that he can kind of break into the zone with, who can match his speed and match that kind of play style, would be very helpful, because then I think that would boost his off rush assist numbers anyway, and would actually create a more dynamic offense, which is something I think the LA Kings desperately need. Quinton Byfield, again, like I talked about, has really started to develop himself into a very good two-way center. Now, I think his offense still needs some work. I don't think that he's hit his peak there. But again, like we're talking about a guy who's going into his age 24 season, he still has a ton of room for development. I'm not really worried about that, but he's definitely showing like why he was picked as high as he was in the draft now, and especially in a draft that like really doesn't get talked about a ton for having good players in it. Byfield has really shown that he is a top 6 center, and I think that just consistency is the biggest thing I need to see from him this year. And I think there is a possibility that at the end of the year, we're talking about a Byfield as leapfrogging Anze Kopitar as the number 1 center on this team, and I think that's almost necessary for the Kings to take a step forward, especially with the decline that might happen in Kopitar and the rise that might happen in Byfield. I think that's kind of a natural progression for how this year goes. And if that does happen, then Byfield's going to look like an even better player for this team, and I think that's very important for what LA needs to do, not just for this year, but for the next couple of years, where they're starting to kind of transition into this new era of the LA Kings, and getting that kind of assurance that they have a number 1 line center for that next 10 years. Is going to be important. I think this is kind of the year we see that jump from Byfield into a number 1 line center role. And if the Kings are going to try to make any kind of noise in the playoffs in terms of like winning a round, that's going to have to be kind of what happens. And it's really catch-22 here for the LA Kings, because like they're probably going to run into Edmonton again if they get that 3rd spot in the Pacific, and it seems like that's kind of their demon, right? It's like the Bruins and Leafs of the West, right? Like, but I do think that in order for them to even get to that point, they need the bounce back from not necessarily a bounce back, but just another level from Byfield. He had a very solid year last year. Bounce back was the wrong word, but he just needs to take another level going into next season. I think he will, because I really like him. Kevin Fiala is another really fun player. Another guy that's just very strong two-way winger, and he wasn't really that until last year. He took a massive jump in his ability to play defense, and I do think that the LA Kings system has really helped him develop that. And I think a lot of his boost is because of the way the Kings play and kind of that team defense style, where it's not necessarily relying just on one guy to kind of carry the load. And I think that's helped Kevin Fiala feel more comfortable in that kind of role. And offensively, I mean, Kevin Fiala, he rocks, right? His finishing ability is phenomenal. He's got a great shot. He always has. That's always been kind of his MO, right? Is that he's a scorer. And when the LA Kings brought him in, that was the idea, right? That he was going to come in and he was going to be this, very good secondary scorer for this team. They brought him and Victor Arvidsson in, and obviously Arvidsson didn't, work out as much as they would have liked, but Kevin Fiala has been very good. And we talk about that trade that they made for Fiala with Minnesota, and it's kind of worked out for both teams, right? Like, I think it's one of those weird trades where things have kind of worked out for both, but I actually think that, like, in a weird way, both teams might have rather not done that, because I think, like, Kevin Fiala would fit really, really well in what Minnesota's doing right now, and I mean, Brock Faber would be the player the LA Kings desperately need on the blue line, so it's like, it's worked out, but I also... I don't know. Kings fans can let me know if they'd rather have Brock Faber right now. I don't think there's a wrong answer because Kevin Fiala rocks, right? Like, I don't think anybody really lost that deal, but it's kind of interesting that, like, you look at the strengths and weaknesses of those teams. Now, again, goal scoring is a weakness kind of for the Kings too, so maybe not, but hopefully you kind of understand what I mean there. I would like to see his power play numbers get better. That's kind of the thing, and especially for a Kings team that's pretty middling to bad on the power play. Kevin Fiala being able to boost that is kind of important. He's going to a age 29 season, so I don't know if he gets much better than he is at this point, but he doesn't really have to. I mean, Kevin Fiala is going to be a high-end goal scorer. His defensive numbers have taken a massive jump, which is weird because the Wild also play like a very team-friendly player-friendly defensive system, but it seems to have only really clicked in LA, which, whatever, it's working out for the Kings for sure, and I think Kevin Fiala, again, is super underrated for what he can bring to the Kings kind of in a second-line role, and I'm intrigued to see what he can do this year, because, again, like, I think he's a very important part to an LA Kings potential Stanley Cup playoff push. I'd mentioned Phillip Danault earlier, and Phillip Danault is another one of my guys, man. Like, I've been a Phillip Danault fan for forever. I think he was massively underrated in Montreal as a first-line center. I don't think he's there now, but even as a 2C, I think he holds a ton of value for a lot of teams. And, his offensive numbers, in terms of his, like, production, have actually went up over the last, since he's become an LA King. We've seen his goal scoring go up. We've seen his point totals kind of, improve. But his offensive generation hasn't really jumped up that much. He's playing similar to how he was. I think, like, just the age dip has kind of started to happen. But in terms of, like, his ability to create, like, he's either, dropped off a little bit or been relatively the same. It's just kind of, he's finally getting those finishing opportunities and those point opportunities. But his defensive numbers are still really good, right? Like, Phillip Danault's MO is always going to be his defensive numbers, his ability to, get the puck out of the zone, retrieve, win battles. Those are always going to be the things. But even defensively, I mean, his stick work's phenomenal. His ability to, clog lanes, stop rushes, all those things are key elements of what Phillip Danault does really, really well, and always kind of has, right? And I think that his, the line that he was playing with in Montreal in his prime was really, it was really built to cater to his game, and I don't think that's existed as well in LA. Although, like, I don't think recreating the prime Gallagher, Tatar, Danault line is ever really possible, just because of how unique and how perfect those three players were for each other. But Phillip Danault still, so his defensive numbers have dropped off a little bit. I think part of it, that is the reason, since he went over to LA. But again, like, his offensive production's taken a boost, so the overall trade-off I don't think is that bad. I mean, Phillip Danault is still a super useful player. Even in, like, a middle six role, he's there, and it's kind of funny because, like, he left Montreal because he wanted more opportunity, and then went to the LA Kings, where he immediately became their third-line center anyway. But, here we are. But yeah, I mean, Phillip Danault's awesome. He's playing that role perfectly for what the LA Kings need, and really helps round out what is, one of the deepest center cores in the NHL. Andrei Kuzmenko's interesting, because Andrei Kuzmenko is just like a scorer who has, insane finishing, even with the slight decline from last year, and he's kind of had a bit of a drop off, each of the last 3 seasons. But somebody who isn't really generating their own offense to a super high degree, and never really has, but his ability just as a scorer is very good and always has been. I'm intrigued to see what another year of Andrei Kuzmenko looks like here. or like a full season of what Andrei Kuzmenko looks like, because I think he could be he's a very interesting player. And again, I think he fits what the LA Kings need, right? They need more goal scoring, and they have guys who can kind of, generate offense themselves, right? They have the playmakers. Even guys like, Kopitar, who is taking a step down in that sense, can still he can still be an offensive creator, and having guys who can just finish is really what the LA Kings need. And maybe guys like Kuzmenko, who can just come in and be a scorer, can help, ease the drop off that could happen in terms of, the regression back to their expected goals numbers. And having guys that can just kind of outscore their expected goals numbers consistently, like Andrei Kuzmenko, will actually really help in that regard. So I'm excited to see what a full year of Kuzmenko looks like in LA, because I do think that he can be a very important piece in kind of stabilizing this offense, so that the drop-off isn't as drastic as it might have been without guys like this. So I think, having utility players like Kuzmenko are really important in that sense. Corey Perry was one of the free agent pickups they brought in here, and Perry, he is what he is at this point, right? He's going to be, your energy fourth liner. He's going to add some toughness to the bottom of the lineup. He's still able to, generate a decent amount of offense. His defensive numbers have never been great, but they're not very impressive at this point. But he'll be gritty. He'll battle for pucks. He'll do all the things that, the Boomer fans love. He'll hit all the buzzwords that people love to see. It's an inoffensive contract. I don't know how much it's going to move the needle to win the Kings a series. I don't know if they would have had Corey Perry last year if the Kings beat the Oilers. I don't know if I'm willing to go there. And again, it's fine. It's an inoffensive move, right? Does it help the bottom? Does it help the bottom of this lineup? Yeah. Does it do anything else that really wows me? Not really. It's not a needle mover for me overall, but it's fine. It's not going to be bad. But it doesn't really move the needle for what the Kings needed. I think they needed another, offensive piece, and I know they were kicking tires on the Ehlers thing. They were kicking tires on Mitch Marner. Neither of those really worked out. I mean, Nikolai Ehlers would have been great. But yeah, I mean, Perry's fine. I don't know. It's not a bad move. It doesn't really move the needle. Joel Armia, on the other hand, it's the same thing. His 5-on-5 numbers are not going to be insanely impressive, right? He's not going to wow you. He's not going to generate a ton of offense. Even his defensive numbers, 5-on-5, are kind of pedestrian. He's pretty league average in both. But what Joel Armia's main strength is the penalty kill, right? He's still one of the best penalty killers in the league, and has been for quite some time. And it's but again, I don't hate it for LA, but the LA Kings penalty kill was already really good. I don't know what bringing Joel Armia in to play on your penalty kill does for your team, right? There were plenty of other teams that desperately needed penalty killers that, that could have offered Joel Armia the same contract, and I guess didn't, or he just didn't want to go there. But I don't know, I don't know where Joel Armia helps move the needle for this team. His skill set is what he does really well. He does really well, right? His penalty kill numbers are fantastic. But I don't know how much that actually helps what the LA Kings are trying to do, because their penalty kill is already really good. So I don't know. It's a weird. It was a weird one for me. I don't hate it. I don't think it's a bad move. But it's just the fact that this is all they did on the offense is I don't know. I would have liked to see a bit more creativity. And I get Ken Holland was brought in, late into the process, in terms of when he got the job compared to when he, had to make all these moves happen. But I don't know. It's just a weird offensive. They didn't upgrade the offense, and that was kind of their biggest need. And they didn't really do anything to help that, right? Corey Perry and Joel Armia aren't gonna suddenly turn this into a good offense, right? So you're really hoping that regression just doesn't happen in terms of your goals. Like, that's the plan. And that's a really shaky plan, in my opinion, for what this team kind of needs. Warren Foegele's, another guy I really want to touch on here. Again, just really, really good defensive winger who, takes care of his own stuff. He's super underrated in terms of what he can do defensively. He has a bit of a scoring touch, but he's pretty, league average in terms of what he does in terms of production and generation. But it's really just his defensive numbers that are very good. His retrievals are solid in the defensive zone. He's going to win a lot of battles. He's going to be kind of a physical presence. Again, going to check off a lot of the boomer boxes. And I like him in that bottom six, and I do think the LA Kings as an offense are going to be tough to play against, right? I think that it's going to be hard to score goals against this offense. It's going to be hard to generate offense against all four of these lines, and I do think that's a positive, right? But it's a lack of offensive creativity, right? I'd sacrifice a little bit of the defensive shutdown ability in order to bring in a dynamic offensive player. I think you can take a little hit defensively for what an offensive creator would do for you, and I just don't know if there's enough of those on this team. We look at this blue line, man, and I know I can already see it. The Drew Doughty comments are going to be crazy, right? But and we're going to dive into Drew Doughty in a second. But even if you ignore the fact that Drew Doughty is well past his prime, and this, except for the blip of a season where he had the bounce back before the injury a couple years ago that took him out for the whole year, Drew Doughty has been extremely injury prone the last couple years, and when he has played, he hasn't necessarily been a liability, but he's not really doing anything to elevate the team anymore, right? And that's kind of why I don't have him as a first pair defenseman at this point. He doesn't do anything to help the team in terms of lifting them to where they want to be, right? Drew Doughty isn't a number one defenseman on a team trying to compete for a Stanley Cup anymore. He isn't. And the problem is the LA Kings don't have anybody else to replace him at the moment, right? Mikey Anderson is a nice defenseman, but Mikey Anderson's a 3 at best on a cup contending team, on a team trying to win playoff series, right? And and maybe LA Kings fans don't think they should be there, but at the same time, you were up 2-0 against the team that just lost in the Stanley Cup final, right? You were a coach's challenge away from maybe being up 3-0 in that series. So don't tell me that comparing them to teams that are competing for Stanley Cups is irrational, because I would disagree. I mean, Brandt Clarke, I like Brandt Clarke. Brandt Clarke hasn't shown me the ability to be a top pair defenseman yet. Do I think he could get there? Yeah, maybe, right? But he hasn't yet. So that's another guy. And then the other three on this blue line are just disastrous. Right? Brian Dumoulin is fine, I guess. He's inoffensive, but Joel Edmondson and Cody Ceci are just a mess, right? Those two are heads. And this is what I mean, right? This is why this blue line ranks where they do, because I don't see it in Drew Doughty anymore. And even if you do, even if you're gonna sit there and say that Drew Doughty is still a first pair, strong first pair defenseman, fine. Okay, let's say I concede to that. Who's your number 2? Is it Brandt Clarke? Maybe he proves it this year. We'll see. Right? Is it Mikey Anderson? Maybe he proves it this year. We'll see. It certainly isn't Edmondson, Dumoulin, or Ceci. And those guys have to be your 4, 5, and 6. Right? Brian Dumoulin's a good 5. Right? He's a good bottom pair guy, but man, it's just a mess. And again, aside from Brandt Clarke, there's not a ton of offense coming from this blue line. Right? The good news for the LA Kings, they actually have some pretty solid defenders on this blue line, aside from Cody Ceci, who just keeps getting contracts for some reason. But it's just a team that is defensively sound, but really, really lacks that type of, dynamic offensive creation. Let's talk about Drew Doughty, man. I mean, the offensive stuff is what it is. His controlled entries are good. Like he's able to, enter the zone with the puck at a pretty high rate, but like his cycle offense is fine. He's not very good off the rush, and unfortunately, like especially as a number one defenseman, it's very hard to be a top pair defenseman if you're not a good rush creator, right? Like unless you're playing for the Carolina Hurricanes, and even then, their guys are still pretty good at it. It's overall concerning. I mean, he doesn't generate, a ton of shots per 60. I mean, his primary contributions per 60 are below league average. His chance contributions are below league average. His chances per 60 are below league average. His high danger assists are below league average. There isn't a ton that he does offensively. Okay, like sorry, I'm sorry. Drew Doughty's a Hall of Fame defenseman. He was unbelievable. He was the best defender in the NHL for a while, or the best defenseman in the NHL for a while. He's not anymore. Like, I'm sorry, I get it. The nostalgia is there. Like, I understand that it's hard to hear that your childhood hero isn't very good anymore. That's just kind of the reality. Like, Drew Doughty as a second pair defenseman is fine. Like he'd be fine in that kind of role, but he doesn't bring enough to the table as a first pair defenseman, especially a number one defenseman anymore. Right? Like if the LA Kings had, Adam Fox paired with them, then maybe I could, I could allow it. But this is the guy from this team going into this year, and that's extremely concerning. Right, and if he isn't the guy, then it's going to be Brandt Clarke, who has never proven that he can be the guy, or it's going to be Mikey Anderson, who, like, come on, let's be for real. I'm very concerned about that. Now, his ability to, stop zone entries is actually still very good, right? Defensively sound there, but like, that's about it. Like that's something that a good second pair defenseman is good at. Right? Like none of this screams I'm a great first pair defenseman anymore. Sorry. It doesn't. And that's not like a shot at Drew Doughty. Like I don't think he was a bad player. Like I love Drew Doughty. I think he's amazing. But he's not that guy anymore. And if you want to be serious and you want to compete for a Stanley Cup and you want to be taken seriously, like you have to show it. Like your roster has to show that you should be taken seriously. And I don't at this moment in time. And part of that is because of the lack of a number one defenseman. Right? And you talk about Mikey Anderson, and it's a lot of the same story. Right? It's a guy who doesn't generate a ton of offense, who's very inconsistent in terms of the offense he generates. Now, again, he's going to his age 26 season. I do like Mikey Anderson, like, overall, but, like, you're talking about a guy who can't finish chances. He does play against extremely stiff competition and puts up very, very good defensive numbers. So, like, that's fine. But, again, like, you were talking about a guy here who does not generate offense, especially for what a top pair defenseman should be able to do. And for a team that needs consistency in terms of creating offense, they're just not getting that from a lot of their forwards, and they're not getting it from the blue line either. And that is really concerning in terms of what this team should be, in trying to compete for a playoff spot. And I do think that being in the Pacific Division the last couple of years has actually hurt what the LA Kings are trying to do, because it's given them this false sense of security that, like, we can be a playoff team every year playing this style of game. Whereas, like, if they were in any other conference in the NHL, that wouldn't have been the case, and maybe there would have been a bit more urgency to change up the plan. And, like, none of that is to say that I dislike Mike Anderson, right? Like, I don't not like him as a defenseman. I just think he's overplayed for what he is. And that's kind of the issue, right? Like if Mikey Anderson was on the second pair in LA, right? If Drew Doughty, Mikey Anderson was the second pair in LA behind a better first pair, that's a really good top four, right? Like if you took the Vancouver Canucks, who we just talked about, their first pair, and you put Anderson and Doughty as the 2 pair behind that, it's one of the best top 4s in the NHL, right? But like, it just, they don't have either of those. Even if they had one of those 2, right? Even like, it just, they don't, and it's created this very uncomfortable situation where I kind of have to rip on players that I like, and it's not their fault. It's just they're being overplayed. Brandt Clarke's another guy that I really like. I think he's easily the best offensive defenseman on this blue line at this point. Like, easily, by far. Like, it's not even close in terms of his ability to create offense and in terms of his ability to like capitalize on creation of offense. Easily the best. His defensive game is not, but it doesn't really matter, right? This team is so good defensively, and they're so defensively sound that like having a offensive defenseman, like hell, if they would have brought in another offensive defenseman, I would have been all for it, right? Like, go get one of the bottom of the lineup OFDs that were out there, and just like play them, right? Because you can afford to do that, right? You don't need every single one of your players to be defensively sound when 99% of your team is going to be anyway, and it can kind of like make up for that. So I really want Brandt Clarke to get big minutes this year because I think it'll help what this team can do. He just needs, like, I don't think he's proven that he can be a real top pair defenseman, right? Like, he's been playing in a, third pair role for a good portion of this, right? Like, it's, he's been playing in the second to third pair role for a good portion of it. So, like, he hasn't been able to prove yet that he can handle being a first pair defenseman. But in terms of his offense creation, like, I really like that, and I think he's going to be super fun. He's the most intriguing defenseman on this blue line, for sure. And it will really help if he can take a step forward offensively to elevate what this team can do, especially from the back end, because they are severely lacking in, offensive creator guys from the blue line. Brian Dumoulin was really good like 5 years ago. Now he's a, poor offensive creator, a really poor offensive creator, and a guy who can play, solid enough defense for you, which is the exact opposite of what the LA Kings needed, right? Like, I don't hate Brian Dumoulin. I'm a Brian Dumoulin fan. I'm a defender of what Brian Dumoulin is as a player. But like, holy God, did the LA Kings not need a player like Brian Dumoulin for this season? Like, they have so many players who fit this archetype on both the offense and the defensive side. Guys who don't generate offense anymore and play good defense. And it's like, I've seen it so many times on this roster, and it's like, they did not need Brian Dumoulin. They didn't need Cody Ceci either, and we're going to talk about him in a second. But they did not need Brian Dumoulin for what the needs of this team were. Is Brian Dumoulin a bad player? No. Despite what his underlying numbers might say, no, I don't think he's a bad player. I think he'll be fine. I think he'll be, solid for what the LA Kings are going to ask him to do. But does he move the needle for this team and get them closer to beating the Edmonton Oilers in round one? Absolutely not, because he doesn't do the one thing this team desperately needed, and that's create more offense. Like, this team, like, I don't understand the thought process behind how this team was built this summer. Like, I'm really struggling. Brian Dumoulin was so unnecessary for this team needed to do. Is he a bad signing? No. Like, he's a fine player. But, like, he was not necessary. Joel Edmondson, like, just isn't good at either of those things. Like, 3 more years at $4 million for Joel Edmondson is it certainly a choice that was made. His penalty kill numbers are fine. He's pretty mediocre at that. But like, he doesn't create offense, and his defensive numbers have plummeted. From what he was a couple years ago, and even then, like, they weren't great. He was physical, and that kind of got everybody excited. Joel Edmondson, if he's the 4th defenseman on this team, they're in trouble. But like, if Brian Dumoulin's your 4th defenseman, you're in trouble too. So like, Joel Edmondson's proven he can eat minutes, I guess. But like, there isn't a whole lot that Joel Edmondson does well at this point in his career. And the contract they gave him was ridiculous. Like, that's insane that he's getting basically $4 million for the next 3 seasons. Is like, it's baffling that was the choice that was made. And especially based on like where the NHL was going. And again, like, the needs of the LA Kings. Like, this team has needed the same thing for a while, and I didn't understand the signing at the time, and man, it doesn't look any better now. And I get it, like, Joel Edmondson's a fun player, he hits a lot, he's got the cup experience that apparently this team needs, despite the fact they have Drew Doughty and Anze Kopitar on it. But like, it's a weird one, man, and I don't understand like why. And like, you had, it's not the fact that Joel Edmondson's on the team that upsets me. It's the fact that Joel Edmondson's on the team and they still decided that Cody Ceci and Brian Dumoulin were necessary additions. Like, Joel Edmondson could be your third pair shutdown in quotations, third pair minute muncher defenseman if you wanted that, like your physical guy who can play 15 minutes a night if you need him to kind of player. Like, the signings they made on this blue line were so redundant and so unnecessary, and it made no sense. And it's just, I really think it's going to hurt what this team's trying to do. Like, I really, really do. And again, like, 3-4 years ago, the LA Kings had one of the brightest futures in the NHL, and they look like this team that was about to take the next step and really become a serious team in the West. And here we are, man, and the outlook isn't very good. Like, cue the LA Kings winning the cup this year, by the way. That's just kind of how this works. So there's some solace for you LA Kings fans. And again, like, I don't think the team is bad. Like, I have them ranked 17th going into the season. That's on the fringe of the playoffs. They're the third highest team in their division that I have ranked. So, like, as of today, right? Like, again, my playoff predictions are going to be different. But, like, as of today, like, going into the season, they are the third best team in their division and, like, right on the fringe of being in the top half of the NHL. Like, I don't think they're a bad team, but it's just there's so much missed potential in what this team could be, and it's just been thrown away with contracts like Joel Edmondson and Cody Ceci. Like, oh my God. I just, like, again, can Cody Ceci play minutes against, competition and kind of be, okay at eating minutes? I guess, but, like, what does Cody Ceci do that the LA Kings didn't have that they needed? Like, give me one thing. Let me, please, in the comments down below, help me understand why Cody Ceci was a necessary signing for this team. Help me understand why any of the players they signed this summer were necessary and are going to help them win a Stanley Cup. Please. Right? And if your argument for any of these players is they bring a good locker room presence, then I will raise you the Anze Kopitar and Drew Doughty are already on this team and already have won Stanley Cups in this team with this locker room in this building. How much more, like, aura do you need in your locker room? Like, if that's what you got, that's a pretty weak argument. There were players that were interesting that could have helped what this team was trying to do. Like, Victor Olofsson just signed. Like, just signed. He was available. I really like Victor Olofsson. I think he would have helped what the LA Kings needed to do on this team, and they just I guess, didn't want to do that. Cody Ceci is not very good at hockey at this point. He used to be pretty underrated. I think his time in Toronto was actually kind of underrated. I think Leafs fans ripped on him unnecessarily for a good portion of that. And then he left Toronto, and he's been pretty unspectacular, let's put it that way, for the rest of his career. Yeah, I get it. If he's your seventh defenseman, I guess, like, that's fine, because he can come in and he's an NHL level player, so, like, if somebody gets hurt, he can fill in a bottom role. But as an everyday defenseman at this point, it's kind of a disaster. Dallas immediately regret. Dallas Stars just have the fetishization of signing bad defensemen last year. Like, oh my god, between Dumba, Labushkin, and Ceci, that was a mess. They ridded themselves of Cody Ceci, and I just, yeah, I don't know, man. This is a fascinating one to me. I don't have much to say. He's not very good. And the LA Kings seem to think he's going to help them win a cup, right? And I get it, like, oh, they're signing their sixth, seventh defenseman. You shouldn't be ripping on them for that. Well, guess what? Nate Schmidt was signed as the seventh defenseman in Florida, and he was one of the most important players for their Stanley Cup run. Because Nate Schmidt's a good hockey player, right? Like, there's your example for why these players matter. Right, Nate Schmidt was brought in on a league minimum contract to be the sixth, seventh defenseman in Florida, and he turned into a $3 million a year, very good second pair defenseman. Is Cody Ceci going to do that? Because, like, I get it, right? Like, why are you complaining about, like, them bringing in fringe players, right? And I don't think like the Brian Dumoulin contract isn't offensive. It's fine, right? The Armia and Perry contracts are fine. It's deals like Cody Ceci, right? And it's GMs that don't think those guys matter, right? Those players don't matter. That they're just going to bring in a guy who, like, can be good in the room, and what they do on the ice doesn't really matter. Like, the top teams in the NHL, the teams that are winning Stanley Cups, don't do that, right? Like, there's no tax argument you can make for Nate Schmidt taking a minimum signing deal after nobody else wanted him and became what he was. Like, that's just Florida being good at managing their players and figuring out, finding those margins to win games with. And the good teams do that, and the ones that don't take that leap don't. And this is just kind of a microcosm of that. Darcy Kemper had a heck of a season, man. I'll give him that. Like, man, the resurgence of Darcy Kemper is something else, because he was good a couple years ago. Then he was really bad 2 years ago in Washington, and then really, really had a resurgence last season. So his rating reflects that. 84 overall, just kind of balancing out the three. The LA Kings also brought in Anton Forsberg to be the backup. I don't think that's a bad choice. Anton Forsberg has been fine as a backup goalie in Ottawa, and I don't think that's a really offensive contract to make. So that seems okay to me. Here's just kind of a look at Darcy Kemper's last three seasons. 22-23, he had a 908 save percentage, a Finnick save percentage of 93.58, and a goal save of 13.21. Very solid season in 22-23. Then 23-24 came around. He played 33 games, had a 892 save percentage, still a 92.68 Finnick save percentage, so not terrible, but a negative 1.73 goals saved above expected, a give or take of a 15-point swing in that stat. But then last year, like, holy shit, Darcy Kemper was phenomenal last year. 50 games played, 0.92, 921 save percentage, a 94.87 Finnick save percentage, which is exceptionally high, and 29.45 goals saved above expected, which is a give or take 30-point swing from the year before, which is insane. Now, the question is, right, and he did all that in front of a defense that was also really good, right? A defensive system that was very solid. You talk about the 57 games played he had in Washington. He faced 167 expected goals against. Last year, in 7 less games, he faced 127 expected goals against. So 40 less expected goals against in 7 fewer games, which just speaks to how good the LA Kings system was. And he put up phenomenal numbers in terms of his goals saved above expected, right? So, like, the amount that he was able to, also uplift what the Kings were doing really, really helped those numbers. Now, the big thing is, do we see the Darcy Kemper, roller coaster continue, where maybe he'll have a down year again? Because that seems to be kind of the thing that Darcy Kemper does every single year that he plays since he left Arizona, basically, right? It's been one up, one down. And if he has another down year, then even if the LA Kings defensive system is as good as it was last year, their actual goals against is going to take a big hit. And I'm not saying that's going to happen. I've been a Darcy Kemper fan forever. So his resurgence is really fun to me. But he just needs to find that consistent level, right? Now, I'm not saying he has to put up, 30 expected goals, goal stated above expected, but if he can be back to that, 13 level that he was at in Washington in 22-23, that's fine, right? That cuts his number in half from where he was last year. So that's still a pretty steep decline, but it's still a very serviceable starting goaltender, right? It's somebody who's still playing, a pretty well above his expected play, and he's playing in front of a system that doesn't allow a ton of expected goals. So that would be considered a good enough season for me to believe in what the LA Kings are doing defensively if Kemper's sitting at, a 13.21 goal saved above expected by the end of the season. That's kind of my baseline for that. Finally, we touch on the special teams, and the power play, as you could probably imagine, doesn't look great in terms of what they do as a power play. There's really nothing on here. Even guys like Kempe and Fiala don't have exceptional power play numbers in terms of their creation or execution. That really needs to jump up, because you can't, it was at a point where the LA Kings were running 5 forwards on their power play, and I know Toronto did that for a little bit, but Toronto did it because they had 5 forwards who could play on the first line power play. LA was doing it because they had to generate some offense somehow, and it was really you could really tell the power play was struggling. And I again, what do they do to help get it better, right? What's the piece on this team? Are you just hoping that Brant Clark can become your first line power play quarterback, which maybe, but his power play numbers haven't looked very good despite the fact that his 5-on-5 offense has. So we'll see, right? The penalty kill is a bit of a different story. Again, I think this team is better than the sum of its parts in terms of its penalty kill ability, right? Warren Foegele is one of the best penalty killers in the league. Joel Armia is one of the best penalty killers in the league. And I think that, Philip Danault's numbers as an individual are fine. Trevor Moore's numbers as an individual are fine. Darcy Kemper's been phenomenal as a goalie, as a shorthanded goalie. So that's good. But it's a penalty kill that really thrives on the system over the players themselves, which is why I don't think that somebody like Joel Armia was super necessary. Although as an individual, Joel Armia has been really good. So fine, I guess. But I just, it's a system that is strong, but the players in it don't have phenomenal numbers, and I really think special teams overall, especially the power play, is very, very lacking in terms of what it could do here for the LA Kings going into the season. And again, if you want to be taken seriously, your power play is a pretty important part of that. So there you have it. That is my look at the LA Kings, and we are officially halfway done this series. So thank you all for watching. Thank you all for supporting, and make sure to tune in for the second half. Subscribe if you're new, and we'll see you for team number 16 in just a few days.